So welcome to this session with our top 10 finalists. Well, almost. We've got 9. We are missing 1. Akila, unfortunately, had visa issues and can't be with us. You can imagine how devastating that is for her. But Dunia, who works very closely with her, has stepped in and will be able to speak about all the work that she does. I'm particularly excited to be doing this because I was on the judging committee, and so I saw their descriptions on paper, and it's wonderful to actually see them in person and to be able to hear from them about the wonderful work that they do. I'm going to start by asking each of them to just introduce themselves and what they do in 30 seconds, starting from left to right with Joe.
My name is Joe Fothery. I'm an instructor of creativity and innovation in the United States at Effingham High School in Illinois.
My name is Ayub Mahmoud Abdi, a teacher in Islia High School, Nairobi, Kenya, and my teaching subjects are Islamic studies and business studies.
Hello, my name is Robin. I'm from Mumbai, India, and I work at Kranti School. And Kranti is an organization that empowers girls from Mumbai's red light areas to become agents of social change. We work with 18 girls who are 12 to 21, and they are all survivors of trafficking, daughters of sex workers, or girls who are born and raised in the red light areas.
Hello, my name is Dunya, but I'm representing Akila Asifi. So I don't know, should I introduce Akila Asifi? For sure, right?
Yeah.
Akila Asifi is an Afghan refugee living in Pakistan for the past 23 years. She came to Pakistan in 1992. She is the pioneer of girls' education in a refugee camp called Kot Chandana in a very remote area in Punjab province of Pakistan. So before Akila's arrival, people didn't have even a name for female teacher. Forget about sending their girls to school. Akila started a school from one tent, which she borrowed from her brother-in-law. And then gradually that one tent with 8 girls expanded to 4 tents, and then a full-fledged school, and today we have 9 schools in that refugee camp, all because of Akila Asifi's hard work.
Thank you. Oh.
Hello, my name is Maarit Rossi. I'm from Finland, and I'm a math teacher, and I have done whole my life my dream is to change the math education so that it would be loved and it would be much more interesting for everybody. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Soskell from the United States, northeastern Pennsylvania, and I empower children to believe that they can change the world in real meaningful ways, and then I provide them the support and autonomy that they need to go ahead and make that happen, and I do it in an elementary science classroom.
Hello, my name is Kazuya Takashi. I'm from Kogakuin University, Junior High School, Tokyo, Japan. I teach many things, including English, literature, and social studies. I use Lego a lot, so sometimes students think I'm a Lego teacher.
Hi, my name's Colin Haggerty from the UK. I'm a maths teacher in Preston Manor, Wembley, London. Maths is everything in my life from a young age. It afforded me such opportunity, and my life's dream is to allow every child to believe that they can do maths.
Good afternoon, I'm Richard Johnson. I'm from Rostrata Primary School in Western Australia. It's a large school with 800 children. It's a state school, and I run a science lab, which was probably one of the first in Australia which was specifically designed for young children. They start in the lab at pre-primary, and it's really an inspiration for them, because one day they'll look back in the world and they'll say, I started science and I loved it from when I was 5 years old. Instead of what most people do now, they say science started for me in high school. So it's a way of changing their whole way of looking and enjoying science. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We haven't forgotten about Hanan. So over to Hanan. She has her own personal translator. She's very special.
حنان الحروب من فلسطين، أدرس في مدرسة سميحة خليل في رام الله، مدرسة حكومية. أدرس الصف الثاني الأساسي جميع المباحث ما عدا اللغة الإنجليزية. أدرس بمنهجية play and learn، نلعب ونتعلم. أعشق الأطفال وأحاول تعويضهم عما يفتقدوه في المحيط.
Ms. Samiha is a teacher from Palestine in Ramallah in specific. She teaches in elementary school all lessons and topics except English language. Her method is play and learn, and she loves all children.
Okay, I'm going to start with the questions with Hanan. So if you don't mind hanging on there, that would be... so Hanan, how do you combat violence through your teaching? Do you want to translate that?
أوكي. أستخدم الألعاب المتنوعة والمختلفة لتغيير سلوكيات الطلبة. أستخدم الألعاب لتغيير سلوكيات الطلبة. أعمل بمنهجيات مختلفة لتطبيق منهجيتي. الألعاب التي أستخدمها متنوعة ومختلفة الأهداف. كل لعبة تكون لها هدف سلوكي وتعليمي في نفس الوقت. أستخدم وسائل تعزيزية كدافع وحافز للطلاب لتغيير سلوكياتهم، فيضطر الطالب تدريجيا من تغيير سلوكياته السلبية إلى سلوكيات إيجابية تسمح له بالاندماج في الفريق والنجاح وتحقق النجاح والفوز. المتعة في التعليم هو ما أسعى عليه. تعليم ممتع ومفرح للطالب وتعليم آمن.
You've got to summarize that.
There goes nothing. Okay, she follows the methodology again, as we said, the play and learn. She loves all children, again, as she mentioned. What she prefers to do is use a specific game or toy for each child to change a specific behavior. So by combining these different methodologies and different toys, she is able to change every specific behavior according to the children. And by following, again, and also different strategies she applies in her school.
Okay,
that really summarized.
All right, well done. That was very good. I'm not sure I would have been able to do that at all. So can we move on to Ayub? Because you're doing radicalization, which is a very, very tricky topic. Can you tell us about the threat of radicalization in your region in Kenya? And how do you combat it through practical ideas in your business studies teaching? And I'm especially interested about the students who came up with the idea of creating roof tiles from solid waste. Was it Easy Tiles? Was that what it was called? Yes. I remember that from the application. That was absolutely fascinating. If you could tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you. Radicalization and violent extremism is really a big problem in my country. So it's a challenge that we are facing, especially there was a shopping center one time that was attacked. One time it is travelers who were in a bus. Another time it was the only university college in a whole region that was also attacked. So we have experienced many cases of violent extremism in our country. And it has not been only one community suffering. It has been different communities, different faiths affected. So it's a very, very big challenge. And I've been trying as an educator how I can be able to step in and trying to be part of the solution together with my students. And I've also realized that I'm dealing with students who are also vulnerable. So I try to empower my students so that and make them understand that violent extremism and radicalization is a very big challenge, and they need to be very, very creative. And most of these extremist groups, they normally take advantage of youth who are unemployed. they normally manipulate and lie to the youth. And I try to empower them so that they can use the environment as an employment opportunity or as a business opportunity and themselves as the capital. So where I teach from, there are challenges of solid waste pollution. And I normally support my students on how they can turn the environment. And they came up with the idea of roofing tiles, whereby we, out of the wasted plastic bottles and polythene bags, which normally end up in the drainage system, which end up as a litter in the streets, how they can be able to convert, how they can be able to recycle, and how they can develop by melting it and then casting it into a shape of a roofing tile, and then from there try to solve the problem of housing, try to solve the problem of unemployment, tries to create jobs for other youth, try to change the mindset of them not only looking for jobs but creating jobs, and even reduce their susceptibility to being recruited by violent extremist groups, because they are making use of their own ideas to come up with such an innovative project, and in that way reduce their vulnerability to being recruited by extremist groups.
And the roofing tiles, they're used in your region, are they? These easy tiles,
Yeah.
Are they used, yeah?
They are not, it is at an incubation stage.
Right.
So we are trying to see how we can scale.
Oh,
up.
I see.
Yeah.
That's
And,
that's a great idea. Well, I think it is anyway. I was fascinated by it. Perhaps I'm on my own here. I'm trying to draw together some themes when I go from person to person, but they're all such different teachers. They're all doing such different things that it's really, really hard to do. But I think I might be able to here with creativity. Over to Joe, because you're doing some rather interesting things in the teaching of new media, and with your take on entrepreneurial skills, helping your students. And I know, I remember a mention, was it you, with MC Hammer?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, tell us a bit more.
Well, we've tried, ever since I've started teaching, I learned really early on a hard way that students didn't necessarily connect to the textbooks and the traditional learning that I was given. And so we went out and we found non-traditional ways that kids were excited about, whether it was music, whether it's writing, whatever the case might be. We tried to find what their interests were and wrap it up in the learning standards. And then the kids were they were on fire for the learning. As far as the entrepreneurship piece goes, we have a very progressive community, but it's a small town in the Midwest at about 12,000 people, and a lot of our kids, they would get ready to graduate and they saw no hope there. And I really hate that kids feel like they have to leave because there's nothing for them. It's okay if they want to move on because they feel like there's opportunity elsewhere, but your community should provide opportunity always for your child. And I had started a program years ago. It was having kids build businesses from scratch. And I had a student one day go out and interview a local businessman, and he came back the next morning. He goes, "Mr. Fathery, I have got to tell you this. I met with this guy, and he told me how to go across the seas and be able to develop an idea, and we bring it back to the United States, and we employ people." And he goes, "Why don't we do something like that?" And I said, "Well, actually, I started a class like that 15 years ago, and I called this guy up on the phone. He was a very successful businessman. We went out and raised $150,000 in startup capital in 3 days. I was asked to teach the class, and it was one of the hardest moments in time in my professional career because I felt like what I would be doing the rest of the time, and if you run an NGO, and Robin knows this, she was talking earlier, you spend an awful lot of amount of time chasing dollars. And I never wanted our teacher to do that, so I gave up the class to work on the framework so the teacher would never have to do that. Long story short, the class now has 70 business partners. The kids meet in a different business all of the time. They have to create a business of their own. They have an angel investor came in and donated money. So if a kid starts a business after they graduate from college, they can come back and eventually borrow up to $1 million to start a business, and then have over 70 partners shepherd them through this. Then the class is now spread to 40 communities across the United States, and I heard the other day that they believe it'll be in 200 within the next 5 years. So we're teaching our young people to be entrepreneurs at a very early age, and we believe in them that they have the ability to start and innovate and create business.
Okay, thank you. And Kazuya, you're also doing quite a lot in encouraging individuality and creativity in children. And what's that like? And how do you do that in such a notoriously rigid society?
Okay. I do believe, do we really evaluate the students rightly? Many schools depends on language skills, cognitive skills. We evaluate kids based on tests, how much they can get on the test. But we are missing their important part. Knowledge, intelligence is not one part. We have many kinds of intelligence. Some kids are really good at language. Some people are really good at music. Some kids are really good at visuals. Some kids are really good at communication. So I would like to focus on their variety of intelligence. So I kind of implemented Lego. That's why I'm doing Lego. That's what I can see how they can create things. They can I can see how they see the world through different lenses. And I also want to evaluate kids in this real world. We evaluate kids in school, but our world doesn't work like this. That's why I want to produce kids, and I want to work with kids. I brought kids to Indonesia, and they work with a social entrepreneur over there. They worked hard so that they can be helpful to others. I want to teach kids be creative, be responsible, and be independent. Creativity is not just like learning something different kind of stuff for college. They have to learn to help others in the future. That's my dream. That's why I'm teaching creativity.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to ask a maths question to both Marit and Colin together, I'm afraid. Now you're quite creative. You want to make maths far more exciting and challenging for children, and to find success and that fun in a subject that not everybody sees as fun and can be traditionally quite divisive. So tell us a bit, both of you, if you go first, Marit, how you do that.
I think that the math education hasn't changed almost 100 years. And I think when I have been seeing a lot of lectures around the world, the structure is very similar. So that's teacher is going to the classroom, telling what is going on, and then after that students are doing similar task. And it's a lack of, it can be a huge lack of connection to the real life. And then, for example, I ask students to draw in the beginning of my lessons when they come to me as new students, to draw a picture of a typical math lesson. And they are drawing themselves alone or in the rows, and teacher in the front of the classroom. And sometimes if they draw only themselves, they are very sad and frightened. And after 3 years, when I a lot of add in the lessons activities so that they are learning in groups, doing by their hands, have huge themes which are involved in the real world. Their drawings have changed enormously. So they are drawing themselves that they are smiling, they are working together, and in those drawings they remember many of the things what we have done. So, and you don't have to change a lot, but you have to break this traditional structure of the math lesson.
Okay, thank you. And Colin, this whole traditional structure of the teacher standing in front of the class. Now, I read that you haven't stood in front of a class for 2 years. Is that true?
Partially. So, 4 years ago, it started. A student came to me at the start of his A-level course. That's when you're 16 years old in the UK preparing for university maths. And his father was terminally ill. And he, being the special human being he was, said, how am I going to keep up with my studies at such a difficult time in his life? Now, you know, in the modern era, we have, I put in the wooden floors in my house last week by looking up how to do it on YouTube. So it just seemed obvious to me to commit that material to him on YouTube. So I stayed up late at night. I worked out how to do what's called screencasting and making YouTube videos. And it took me a very, very long time to do it, but I made his whole A-level maths course available online. That boy kept up with his studies. He's doing engineering at college, which is amazing. But at the same time, there was an opportunity to maybe reinvent the class with the other students that were with him. What I would do is ask the students to... I tell them that I work extremely hard in my life to be successful, and I expect that of them, and I won't let them get away with anything but hard work. I prepare a lot for the lessons for them. So I wanted them to prepare for their lessons the way I did. And that would be to go away and watch that material in advance and come in with the notes and the information that you need for that lesson beforehand. Because if I had to spend 10, 15 minutes explaining a difficult mathematical concept, that really could be time shifted out of the classroom. The advantage of that is some students get things the first hearing. Some students get things the 20th hearing, but you can't hear it 20 times in this maths classroom. And it's embarrassing. When you're young and you're growing up and you've got acne and you're worried about finding a boy or a girlfriend or whatever, it's really embarrassing to put your hand up and say, I don't understand it. If you, in the comfort of your own home, can go back over that material and make yourself feel better about it in the privacy of your own home and prepare for your lesson, they came in enabled. I wasn't the only owner of that knowledge at the start of the lesson. I had 30 other students who knew that knowledge, and we started at a much more advanced point. They would ask me crazy questions that I never used to get answered, and that's how we would do the lesson. We would spend the whole lesson, like Marit said, like doing maths. There's no point me explaining you how to do it. The little bit of that we did beforehand. Let's just do really good maths.
What's a crazy question?
Well, like, they would like look up things like Hungarian math challenges from 1984 and things and say, "Sir, can you do it?" Which is like unbelievably difficult. But we could actually do it. We actually found a way of getting to those type of questions that we never would have had time to do otherwise.
Right, but that is a crazy question. No, I like that. Okay, it seems that we should move swiftly on to STEM then from maths, because maths is part of STEM. Do you everywhere you go now, everybody is talking about STEM and that we haven't got enough people doing STEM. I mean, do you think we just focus on it too much, Richard?
Well, I'm not too sure about where we are in Australia with STEM. We seem to only have just taken up the challenge of it. And the science lab started 11 years ago, and we raised some money with grants and things, and we brought in some very high technologies into the lab. With that, they gave us a license to call it a STEM lab. And that happened about 3 years ago with the when we brought 3D printing in. And since then, we've added 3D glasses. Everything seems to be a 3D world that's coming. And so we've got the kids pretty excited about it. And we've got a 3D scanner coming. We've got a 3D camera coming. And these are the technologies, not of the future, they are actually now. And when the lab's been so successful, a lot of people just wanted to come and visit, see what we did with the kids. We don't have behaviour management problems at all. When the children come in, they are so excited. They just forget about any disruptive behaviour at all. And so other schools come in, like-minded teachers, like-minded principals, and they go back to their schools and they do exactly the same thing in their own way. And really, we've had about 100 schools start up now with labs in the same vein, and they haven't been given any extra funding. It's just the will of the teachers. So this was a beautiful thing that has happened throughout the whole state. Our state is the size of Texas, and people travel up to 2,000 kilometres just to come and visit the room. I even had a lady that came from England. She was a a Churchill travelling scholarship winner last year, and she travelled to Australia because she'd heard about the lab. So it really punches above its weight with in the world of science and technology. So all in all, yeah, we've had great success, and it seems to be flowing on. So much so that political parties now have given it some support, and that is extraordinary for a country. So West Australian, coming up for an election, yes, the labs in schools idea is actually on the agenda. So I'm pretty happy about that. And that's from the opposition party. The current party also visited the lab the other day and said, how can we trump their idea? So there you go. It was an amazing thing that's happened.
Behaviour management. You said you don't have any behaviour problems. So
No.
So how do you do that?
We make the lessons so interesting.
Oh, right. I thought you were going to tell me you made sort of 3D printed sort of images of them and put them there instead.
There's a way we've come to think in the lab, and if we have a problem, we can solve anything now. Any technology that we stumble with, we work collaboratively with people around the neighbourhood, in business, parents, you name it. We can solve any problem now.
Oh, that's very impressive. Thank you. Over to Michael. I told you I wasn't going to ask you a difficult question, but I lied to you. You're doing global citizenship. So how do you encourage that in the US when, you know, it's a country that often doesn't see beyond its own borders, and there are even some who want to erect walls.
Well, I hesitate to
now.
speak for all Americans.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, please, because I'm going to speak for all Brits.
You know, this world has a lot of problems, and I truly believe that the solutions to every one of those problems is trapped somewhere inside of our students' passions. What we've been able to do is to connect students to passionate individuals who are problem solvers around the world, to let them feel that passion and make it theirs. And, you know, learning has to be student-centered. It has to be student-driven. We want intrinsically motivated learners. And so we try to expose our students to a wide variety of viewpoints, points of view, problems that are going on in different areas that they might not otherwise be exposed to. Joe mentioned that he's in a small town of about 12,000. My town has less than 2,000 people, and it's very economically disadvantaged. 1 in 4 of our students go home to a family where at least one of their parents is codependent on drugs and alcohol. The majority of our students live in poverty. Sometimes there's not a lot of hope in those households. But I believe that the way to empower students and give them hope is to let them know how much they matter and how powerful they can be when they use their learning to solve those real problems in the world. And that's what's happened. I'm so proud to represent my students because they've made some real positive change in many different places. I look around the room and I see teachers from different continents that we've worked with before. We've worked with their students, and here we are in Dubai, half a world away, and those connections are there. We've connected with over 70 different countries, the International Space Station, and scientists in Antarctica just in the last 2 years in our school. And every one of those is an opportunity for our children to see a different viewpoint and learn about a different problem that they might want to solve. Sometimes they're really interested in those problems and they get involved, and sometimes they're not. But when they are, magic happens. And my job as their teacher is to give them the support, the autonomy, and the inspiration to go ahead and make real change. We've worked to provide clean drinking water to children in the Kibera slum who were dying. When I was over there for the two weeks I was in Kibera, 12 kids died of cholera. We were able to provide clean water and drinking filters to not just 2 schools, but also to students to take home to save some of those children and their families. We were able to provide math materials, eventually directly, but before we could get them to Kenya, we had our children using the math materials that we had in Pennsylvania that weren't available in Kibera to teach through short videos and put them on a website. But it's really important when you do a service project that it's not a one-way collaboration, because you want every group of students to understand how much everybody matters. And so while we were providing those math videos to the children in Kenya, we asked them to teach us Swahili in exchange because we wanted to empower them and show them how much they mattered as well. So through a variety of service projects, we've been able to provide that worldview for our students to allow them to grow not to be the ugly American who has a very ethnocentric point of view, but to be that change maker in the world, and that makes them empowered as well.
Thank you. He does have very luxuriant hair, though. Can I just pick up on your points of hope and empowerment, because that sort of moves swiftly on to probably the biggest problem of our time, and that's the refugee crisis. If I could ask you, Dania, could you tell us how Akila and you, I guess, together, you tackled the importance of girls' education in a refugee situation, and what can we all learn from that?
Yes, refugee crisis is one of the biggest problems of our time. But when we talk about a refugee crisis, we only focus on food, shelter, and their accommodation. How often do we think about education equally important as shelter, as food? Because everything would finish. The only thing refugees can bring with them or take with them is education. Giving example of Akila Asifi, she came to Pakistan when she was just in her late 20s. The family didn't have enough time to pack everything and come back to Pakistan from Kabul. So Akila and her husband and 2 children, the only thing they had was education. They came to Pakistan, and when they saw in the camp, the majority of people in that camp were from Kunduz. Kunduz is one of the very underdeveloped and the most conservative part of Afghanistan. The majority of people there are from nomad background. So convincing them that girls are equally important as boys and girls' education is equally important as boys was not an easy task, especially for a woman in our part of the world. So Akila started, and here people are talking about innovative approaches because we are living in the age of technology. But in our part of the world, our challenge is very simple: to bring children to this classroom. We are not talking about technology. We are not talking about entrepreneurship. We are just talking about basic primary education. So she started with her advocacy campaign with elders of the camp. Her husband was very supportive, so the 2 of them started convincing, talking to the camp. I mean, Akila could have said this is none of her problem, because why should she be bothered about educating the girls? But she thought, as a teacher, she was also a teacher in Kabul, this was her responsibility if she wants to contribute to the development of the world, not only her community, but she was thinking global back then. If we want Afghan people to be equal to the people of any developed country, all they need is education. And this was what she started, as her point. So she went door to door, from one mother to the other, from one father to the other, mosques, community centers, and literally begged them to bring their girls to school. But I don't know why this psyche still persists there, that schools are instruments of Western propaganda. And I don't really mean anything bad, but this is the perception. People think once they start getting education, they can maybe move away from religion, from cultural norms and traditions, which is just not the right thinking, because as a Muslim, Akila tried to convince them that the Prophet's teaching, the Quran teaching, starts with word ikra, which means learn, read. So she picked up on word ikra and went door to door and even asked them, the Quran you read in Arabic. It's so easy for us in Pakistan, Afghanistan to read Arabic, but we don't understand Arabic. Akila went there and asked them, the Quran you read, do you even know what you are reading? They were surprised to know, like, really, these verses we read, this has any meaning? And Akila tried to explain to them, of course, it has a meaning. Picking up on verses and hadiths. specifically about education, because one of the hadith says that education is compulsory for every man and woman, and then another hadith says that even if you want to acquire education and you have to go to China, go there, because maybe back then China was one of the farthest centers. So that was the thing which convinced the community that education is not only meaning Western ideology, but it is very much Eastern values and religion. So from there she started, and she's so proud that she was one woman who changed the life of so many others. It was the power of education that now people in the camp where she is living, the ratio of child marriages have dropped down. Now the average age of girls getting married is 18 plus, which was not the case 23 years ago, because 12, 13 was old enough girl to be ready for marriage. And now another change is, and as a Pakistani, as someone from a very tribal background myself, I know, I mean, it takes courage for a girl to stand up and tell her father, I don't want to marry the person you have chosen for me. But Akila is so proudly tell everyone that in her camp, now girls have a say when their parents are deciding their marriage. Maybe, I mean, this may sound very little from your perspective, but from an Afghan perspective, from a refugee perspective, and looking at Syrian refugee crisis, you might have heard so many girls were married off when they were very little, and it's still happening. Why? Because of their protection. So those things were changing and are now changing, and that was because of the power of education, that girls can now tell their parents they don't want to get married, they don't want to get married to a certain person, and child marriages in that camp, not all over. So education is power, and if you want a change, that's only through education, positive education, and that's the message of Akila. She says she's one teacher, she transformed the life of 1,000 girls with no support from outside world. So she says, imagine the power of 1,000 girls with support, with resources, and multiply this whole thing. So,
yeah, one amazing woman. It's such a shame she's not here today. It really is. Robin, you also work in some challenging circumstances and face similar sort of pressures of, you know, how do you convince girls that education is a worthwhile pursuit, especially in the face of a lot of the pressures that they have? And how do you teach children who are so damaged by their childhood? That must be a real challenge.
Okay, so actually, I think that this is one of like a very big misconception that a lot of people have about red light areas and about sex workers. And I know that when you watch these documentaries on BBC and that kind of stuff, like, I'm sorry, not BBC specifically.
That's all right.
CNN,
I don't work for the BBC.
CNN,
You can
is
say
that
the BBC.
You know, people really want to show these situations where a lot of women who are sex workers or started sex work early, then want to sell their daughters into sex work. And I think, honestly, nothing could be further from the truth. I think that the majority of sex workers are working because they want their kids to live just a slightly better life than they lived. And a lot of times they're doing it because I've spoken to a lot of sex workers who say, like, you know, I do this because I want my kids to study in English, you know, versus like some local language and stuff. And so I really, really respect sex workers a lot. I think that they are moms making the greatest of sacrifices in the world. And I honestly have to say, though, I think that all the kids who come to us, like, they want to study and they want to learn and they want to do something, you know, not necessarily that they want to study in formal schools, because that's always been a really bad experience for them, but they're eager to learn. And I think that, you know, this misconception of all girls from red light areas, you know, end up in the red light area or doing sex work and stuff is something that is, is something that is really misconceived from a lot of these outside representations of media representations of what happens in these places.
Okay, sorry about that. Obviously misrepresented you too. But thank you for that. I'd like to open up to questions from the floor, please, for the next. I think we've got about 10 minutes to do that. Has anyone got a question for any of the panelists? All of the panelists? Or have we stunned you all into silence? Which is... Oh, no, look, there's the class SWAT, you see. She's got a question.
Okay, thank you. My name is Magdalena Osumi. I work for the Japan Times, and I would like to address my, I'd like to listen to all of you respond to my question, but I would like to address my question directly to Mr. Kazuya Takahashi. Well, I'm sure that since you've been all shortlisted from well, it was a while ago when you were selected and shortlisted to the top 10, and I'm sure you have exchanged information and all your thoughts about the needs in different regions and methods of teaching. And I would like to ask Mr. Takahashi, what do you think is needed? Like, we've heard many, different issues are, different countries have different issues, like refugees, violence. And what do you think Japanese kids need to learn, and how teachers should...
Wiping his brow at this point.
I'm sorry, I know it's a broad question, but how teachers should prepare children to get a better understanding of those issues around the world? Thank you.
Well, where would you like to start?
Should I take it?
Yeah, I think you have to.
Thank you so much. A good question. Actually, we are some students, some teachers specialize in STEM education, math education, global citizenship, it's like sex traffic, and education in refugees. But we all teachers here facing one direction. Education makes this world better. That's the thing. We do not teach STEM. We do not teach math. We don't teach global citizenship just because two kids to get into college and get a good job. No, it's not our dream. Our dream is teach kids to responsible what they learn and to use it for others. That is the ultimate goal of ours, right? Are we on the same page?
Yeah. Do we have consensus?
So I know I learned a lot today. We are family. We are same passion. We are facing the same direction.
Does anybody else want to come in on that? Yep, at the end. Oh, did you want to as well?
Go ahead.
Go
Well,
quick.
I'll keep mine very brief. And just from getting to know these 9 outstanding teachers through their videos, through talking with them over the last couple of days, I think that I can honestly say that, we know neuroscience tells us that children have to have an emotional connection with the content that they're learning in order for them to learn it long term. These 9 individuals sitting around me create incredible experiences that give amazing emotional connections to content to their students. And if there's one thing that I think we all have in common, it's that we strive to give our children the most amazing experiences that they can get in school, transcending textbooks, to make sure that they learn in real meaningful ways.
Okay, thank you. Joe.
We had the wonderful opportunity for the past 2 days to meet as Varkey teacher ambassadors. And so the top 100 teachers from the last 2 years have been invited in. And what I'm incredibly excited about is the global network that we're building right now, trying to address the situation that you're talking about. We realize that we have an opportunity to be the voice of teachers all over the world. And there are incredible educators out there that unfortunately will never have this platform. And so we want to find a way to be able to connect with them, to share their stories, to be able to take the rich content that comes out of these classrooms, to create toolkits, to tell stories, and really change the narrative about what great teaching is. And when that happens, it works in 2 areas. One, it changes it with community. Business leaders, policy makers look at teachers differently. But the other thing I think we're very excited about is it challenges our fellow teachers to look at teaching differently. And that's where we believe we can start a conversation that's going to impact the world for a long time to come.
Okay, thank you. And that sort of goes into one of the questions I was going to put to you, so I might as well just put it now because you've touched upon that. You are the top 10 teachers in the world at the moment, till next year. And then you'll be knocked off your perch, off that pedestal. But at the moment, looking at the theme of this entire conference of collective responsibility, do you feel a collective responsibility? How are you going to change things? I mean, if there is one thing that you can do as 10 teachers, what would that be? Do you have a sense of that at all yet? 30 seconds. Go on, summarize that.
Well, we actually worked for 2 days to start creating a global toolkit for teachers. Strong points that we can work with, and then use that as a stepping off point to see where we can go next. And I don't know, would someone else like to comment as to...
What does your global toolkit look like?
Well, I can tell you for ours, the one that we worked on, my group, was we worked on helping teachers learn how to self-reflect for practice, how to build collaborative networks, and how to build personalized professional development. That's a big task just for my committee, and we had, 8 strands that we looked at, and the Varkey Foundation is committed to helping us roll those pieces out, and looking forward sometime this next year to making that happen and share it around the world.
Wonderful. Well, we look forward to seeing that. Very good. All power to you. I think we had one question over there. I think we'll take that. If you could be brief, please. Thank you.
My question was really for Robin, who has chosen to work outside of the mainstream school system because, as she said, she didn't really believe in the system. And so my question is it, in your view, broken beyond hope? How many children are in schools that really would need, would function so much better in an alternative system? Which bits of the system would you really, really say delete for everybody? What role does the system have, in your view?
Oh, God, no. You have to do it really quickly.
Okay.
You've got a couple of minutes,
all right,
Robin. Go on.
For those of you who were actually in my session just right before this, I'm sorry I'm repeating. I think that the purpose of education, when we sit and actually think about what it's supposed to do, what the purpose of anything is, the purpose of everything that we do in life, the idea is that we do it to make ourselves happy, right? And I think that that should be a very well acknowledged purpose of education as well. And the strand that I was in was social emotional development. I think schools have completely forgotten that kids are emotional beings, and we just look at them as computers that we're dumping information into and expecting them to regurgitate a lot of times. Our school, we work particularly on projects. I think a lot of people have spoken about the emotional connection to your subject matter. And you know what? Let me tell you, telling 17, 18, 19-year-olds who have been out of school for 10 years, have failed everything that they've done, that, you know what, this is going to matter in 10 years, does not work. You need to make that connection right now. And I think it's different for every organization and every school, the community that they're working in, the specific situations that they're facing. So you have to be very innovative with what you're doing. But specifically, I just think that we need curricula that really acknowledge and meet the needs of that local community. It's not just that you pick up this curriculum and you copy paste it all over India or all over the US or whatever it is. But alternative education, I think, is the only way to, oh gosh, she's put me in such a bad spot. The system is not hopelessly broken. No, I don't think. I think there's a lot of things that need to be added to it, but there are quite a few things that need to be removed. And we're not innovating the system as we go. Look at what technology, where we've reached in the past 10 years. Why haven't schools reached that in the past 10 years? Healthcare has reached amazing. We've had so much innovation in healthcare. Why has the education system not changed? Since a lot of people have said, I think since the Industrial Revolution. So I think it's really important to start thinking locally and within our communities, of course, with the global citizenship thing as a component, a very important component. But I mean, come on, we really need change. The system doesn't work, and it's so clear. I think Mr. Varkey spoke this morning about so many kids in failing in, I forgot how many it was, 500 million kids in failing schools, and what is the point of that school? Let's really, and it's a great opportunity as well, when you look at places like New Orleans or, places that are completely starting over, we need to dump those schools and completely start over. It's an amazing opportunity for innovation and for bringing in really innovative best practices from all over the world. So let's get on it.
Right, you said there's things you take away and there's things you add. I'm going to put you on the spot now. 3 things you'd take away, 3 things you'd add.
Ouch. Okay, so I haven't been in formal schools for quite a while, and I know that I grew up in the U.S., but I work in India, and you know, in the Indian school system, honest to goodness, like literally, there's no concept of the depth of knowledge, right? You're basically literally, there's a worksheet over here, and you're supposed to pick out the answers of what's in line 3, what's here, what's there. I have kids who have passed 10th grade, completed their exams and passed, and they can't do 3rd grade maths, you know? So I think that this is one of those, the copy-paste method is one thing that I think really needs to go. The concept of exams, I'm sorry, not exams per se, but oh God, I know I'm gonna get into a lot of trouble. Just the concept of you are worth what's on your exam sheet. That is a problem, and that's something that's really, really damaging and depressing to kids all over the world. So I think just the concept of you being equated with your grades, and India has a big problem with kids committing suicide in 10th grade, you know, because that's one of those big exams. And I think that, you know, so exams also, not that exams need to go, but exam systems really, really, really need to be changed. And the last thing I'd say is that this concept of you know, open your brain, we're gonna dump stuff in, and then we're done, and, you know, regurgitate it, I think is like completely, I think students really thrive when they're required to create things rather than required to regurgitate. You know, I'm gonna tell you what I know, and then you're gonna put it on a paper, versus, you know, here's some examples and here's some ideas, and go out and do what you can do with it. We have a lot of projects and stuff I think that we work with in our communities. Sorry, again, repetition, my last session, but we picked out 5 things that we think are really, really important for our kids, and, you know, to be able to live the lives that they are going to go, and we're not unrealistic, you know, none of our kids are, you know, like, you have to be realistic about where you're working, you know, and we really struggle a lot. So we've picked out these 5 things. Communication is one, community leadership is another, critical analysis, creative thinking, and problem solving, which I think everyone would agree with here, and compassion. And I think that, like, we build projects basically looking at how each one of these components fits into that, you know? So we have a project that we're doing in conjunction with the municipal government right now, but we're cleaning up a slum that's right in front of us. And the kids have to write all the letters, you know, in order to talk to the government and or to talk to the neighbors. They have to go around counting and figuring out exactly how many people are using this area and dumping grounds for what kind of activities. They have to go around and speak to all these people and convince them not to dump their chai cups in, you know, on this ground and stuff. And when I look at that, a program like that, it incorporates all the things that we want to focus on, but it also incorporates all the English, all the math, all the science, like everything that you could possibly want to be teaching.
Can I stop you there and bring in some of the other teachers? Do you agree? Are there other things you'd... And would you like to rip up the whole education system?
I haven't finished my half hour. I haven't finished my half hour.
You can... Oh, yeah.
So I agree with a lot of what Robin said, and I agree that exams are a problem and that we need to intrinsically motivate children instead of relying on extrinsic rewards like grades. But I'll just take the other part of that question. What should we add in to the school system? Being someone that works in a public school and believes in the public school system, I think we need to add in inspiration. Right now, there are a lot of teachers that have forgotten why they entered into the teaching profession. You know, every teacher that I ever met became a teacher because they wanted to change the world in a positive way. But some of them have forgotten that that's what they chose the profession for. Some of them have forgotten why they chose to have the greatest job in the world. We need to inspire them. And that's one of the things that Joe was talking about before that I'm so hopeful about with the Varkey Teacher Ambassador Program. You know, you have some incredible stories to tell. And each of us has a mission as well, to go out and identify others who are not recognized, who have incredible stories to tell, so that we can use them to inspire other people who are within the system to remember that purpose and to bring that to their students so that we can have an excellent educational system.
Thank you. Sorry,
just one
can
word.
you be
Just
very,
one word.
very
I know.
quick?
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
So we are teachers. We believe learning happens anywhere, anytime. If we live in 21st century, this is an assignment from us, ladies and gentlemen. We're teachers. Your assignment. Does it really make sense? We draw a line. Here is a school. Here is outside school. Here's our mainstream school. Here's outside. I mean, it's not mainstream school. Learning happens everywhere. It doesn't matter.
Thank you very much, and what a wonderful note to finish on. Can I ask you all to thank all our top 10 finalists? Yeah. Then we can- And we wish you all the best of luck tomorrow.